In the RRC, the Recovery Revolution Community, we have some amazing online meetings, and one of those is our Tao Recovery Meeting. In this meeting, one chapter of the Tao Te Ching is discussed every week as to how it relates to recovery. I hope you enjoy this week's podcast episode.
Hey everybody, Buddy C. This is the August 15th, 2019 Tao Te Ching meeting for the Recovery Revolution Community. We have Marla H. and Lala M. and Paul H. with us today, and probably have one or two more pop in as we get going. How are y'all today? Everyone doing well?
Great.
Good. We've got another thought on this 54th chapter that I think is pretty good. It kind of expands a little bit, I think, of this idea of just letting the Tao, letting go and letting God, just going with the flow, all of that kind of thing. So it's, I think it's really, this is another, of course, they're all really good, but I enjoyed this one especially.
It's important. Again, they're all, like you said, they're all important, but this one just says, live a virtuous life and you will be living with the Tao.
Yes. Yes. Lala, you want to read for us today, ma'am?
Yes, sir.
All right. We're going to test your internet this week and see how good it's doing.
All right. The 54th chapter, first translation. What is firmly established cannot be uprooted. What is firmly grasped cannot slip away. It will be honored from generation to generation. Cultivate virtue in yourself, and virtue will be real. Cultivate it in the family, and virtue will abound. Cultivate it in the village, and virtue will grow. Cultivate it in the nation, and virtue will be abundant. Cultivate it in the universe, and virtue will be everywhere. Therefore, look at the body as body. Look at the family as family. Look at the village as village. Look at the nation as nation. Look at the universe as universe. How do I know the universe is like this? By looking.
Easy enough.
It's so obvious.
Yeah.
Second translation. Whoever is planted in the Tao will not be uprooted. Whoever embraces the Tao will not slip away. Her name will be held in honor from generation to generation. Let the Tao be present in your life, and you will become genuine. Let it be present in your family, and your family will flourish. Let it be present in your country, and your country will be an example to all countries in the world. Let it be present in the universe, and the universe will sing. How do I know this is true? By looking inside myself. Third translation. That which is well built will never be torn down. That which is well latched cannot slip away. Those who do things well will be honored from generation to generation. If this idea is cultivated in the individual, then his virtue will become genuine. If this idea is cultivated in your family, then virtue in your family will be great. If this idea is cultivated in your community, then virtue will go a long way. If this idea is cultivated in your country, then virtue will be in many places. If this idea is cultivated in the world, then virtue will be with everyone. Then observe the person for what the person does, and observe the family for what it does, and observe the community for what it does, and observe the country for what it does, and observe the world for what it does. Final translation. Tao's power is so deeply entrenched it can never be uprooted. Tao's power clings so tightly it can never slip away. It will endure for generations. If you get in touch with the power of Tao, it will become real. If your family gets in touch with the power of Tao, the power will flourish. If your community gets in touch with the power of Tao, the power will grow even stronger. If your country gets in touch with the power of Tao, the power will become abundant. If the world gets in touch with the power of Tao, the power will be everywhere. How do I know this? I just do.
How about this first little phrase at the top? Do I need to share this, or do y'all pull it up on your computer, or do I need to keep it shared?
I pull it up on mine.
Okay, so y'all pull it up on yours? Okay, so how about this first phrase at the top of Mitchell does the second translation. He says, whoever is planted in the Tao will not be rooted up.
Yeah, you have to be firm in your convictions, be firm in your confidence, in your...
What does it mean to be planted?
I think it means to be seated and rooted and
placed in the ground so it can grow is the definition of that. Placed in the ground of the Tao, not just a little dab here or dab there. That's what you surround yourself with. That's what you're buried in. I mean, that's everything. You're consumed. It says, and if you're planted in the Tao, not occasionally watch it or think about it, but if it's what you're pursuing, it's what's giving you your nourishment. Okay. It's interesting too, and he does this a lot where he'll have it backwards. He'll give you the result first, and like everyone wants to be firm, and they want to have stability, and he tells you that first, and then he talks about what you have to do to get there.
Yeah.
And so I thought that was interesting. I said, planted in the Tao. And I think about my recovery in regards to that, and how many people I see that just say they want recovery, but they don't really plant themselves in recovery.
Well, yeah, I was like that for a while. But in terms of recovery, here we are, planted in our recovery. Nothing can get in the way of that. Recovery first, and be firm about that.
And I was just thinking about that how, I just stuck my toe in a little bit at first and said, I don't know about that. I don't, and then eventually though, I had to jump all in. I had to be all in with recovery. And this is the same thing, I think, is just another aspect of that. Because really the Tao is the way. So are you fully planted in the way, or are you, are we still, in, part self and not totally convinced that, if you're applying it to recovery, let's say, am I totally convinced that I do not have the solution? If I'm not totally convinced, then I'm not really planted yet.
That makes sense. I feel that way about God. It's like it took a while to be firmly planted in the idea that there's a God. But then there's all indications that there actually is. And I'm becoming more cemented into the idea that there's something out there that's not me. Yeah,
this whole idea of surrender for me was when that planting happened. I remember after 6 years of trying, 6 years of dipping my toe in, and it was not working. I said, okay, either this is or it's not. There's no in between. And that's when it started working. That's when I totally surrendered.
Mm-hmm.
I think we all have that point where we get planted.
Yeah.
Does that resonate at all?
Yeah, because being wishy-washy is being wishy-washy. There's no firm ideas in that, Indecisive people are wishy-washy. Just make a decision.
And then the next idea with this is cultivating virtue, or the Tao. Well, one of the translations, the first one talks about cultivating virtue, and the second one says, let the Tao be present in your life.
Mm-hmm.
And the third one just says, get in touch with the power of Tao. But letting the Tao be present in our life is the real work that I see in this 54th chapter. This is how we plant ourselves.
Well, yeah, it kind of starts with yourself. And I think they all kind of say, start with yourself. Mm-hmm. And then it'll ripple effect to your family, those around you. The country one definitely struck a nerve here. It's like, our country is definitely not firmly planted in the Tao, that's for sure. From my point of view, but
nor has it ever been. But
and then the universe from there.
Right.
And it's interesting how you start with you. What's the I am the change.
Be the change I wish to see.
Change, yeah, be the change. Starts with us. Then it works out to the people around us. Then our community and our country, and then the universe. And how do we know that? By looking back at us.
Mm-hmm. We just do.
Yeah, we just do.
We just do.
But you know what the problem is? Before, I never looked. They said, by looking, I didn't know how to turn the light around and look within, because I was always looking out there for the answer.
Yeah, I was always numbing myself so I wouldn't have to look at me.
It's their fault. It's someone else that's caused this. I had no idea that it came back to me looking within. That's where it starts.
What do they say? If you're not part of the solution, you're part of the problem.
Indeed. Yeah.
I was never part of the problem. Everyone else was my problem.
Right. And that was the problem.
Yes.
So it's like it comes back to our reactions to people. In other words, if we're firmly planted, we're not going to react to other people's not being in the Tao.
Exactly, Lala. We have to, when we're firmly planted, and the way we do that is by letting the Tao be present or cultivating this virtue in our life. Then the next question is, how do we do that?
Awareness. I know for me, it's like firmly planted doesn't mean that we're a perfect shining example, but we bring awareness when we're not following the Tao, and it brings it back to it. In other words, I don't know if any of us perfectly or can be following the principles 24/7, but bringing back awareness anytime we're not following the Tao.
Yes.
Yeah.
Agreed.
Seeking that first, seeking the will of God in our life first.
Just keeping an open heart and an open mind.
Yes.
Yeah. The awareness, so is paramount. Just knowing when you're off the path.
Right.
And bringing yourself back to the path.
Right. Kind of like meditation. It's like bringing yourself back to the breath, knowing when your thoughts are taking you out of the... when they're taking over.
All those things help me with that. All of my spiritual practice, my surrender, my meditation, my openness, Paul, like you were talking about, opening my heart, being of service, all those things. I found a couple of examples in the Tao Te Ching to apply to this too. The 62nd verse says, If a person seems wicked, do not cast him away. Awaken him with your words. Elevate him with your deeds. Repay his injury with your kindness. Do not cast him away. Cast away his wickedness.
Yeah.
Repay injury with kindness. Have we not heard that before?
Yes.
Like in recovery. Go ahead. I'm sorry, Mark.
Because it works.
Yes.
Forgiving
2,500 years ago,
Right. And forgiving others is self-healing.
Because it's a boomerang. We get back what we're giving.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like when people they're spoiling for a fight kind of thing. Like some people are spoiling for a fight, and if you don't give it to them and you return it with kindness or compassion, it ends it. They have nothing to hold on to.
Right. There's nothing.
How about this one? This is the 69th. There's no greater misfortune than feeling I have an enemy. For when I and enemy exist together, there is no room for my treasure. If you ask me what the worst thing in the world is to have, I would not say an enemy. That would be way down the list. I don't think I would ever, I would never think of that. But he said the very worst thing is to have an enemy for this very reason we're talking about. So we don't even have to go outside of the Tao Te Ching itself to find multiple examples of why we have to repay evil with good and why that works. I've got one more for you that I found. This is the 79th. One with true virtue, we're talking about having virtue, cultivating virtue.
Mm-hmm.
One with true virtue always seeks a way to give.
Mm-hmm.
Always seeks a way to give. One who lacks true virtue always seeks a way to get. Pretty simple.
Indeed it is.
So if I want virtue, if I'm cultivating virtue, if I'm letting the Tao instead of letting Buddy, because Buddy wants to get, so the Tao wants to give. So the first question is, how can I give in this situation, not how can I get? And if I pursue that path, I'm going to stay planted in the Tao, and I am cultivating virtue. Thank y'all for coming today. We're going to, no, I guess we're
Drop the mic.
right there, really.
That's it.
We can't, Paul. We got to keep talking for a while. This has been too short.
All right.
The thoughts?
Well, it just leads me back to God again, And I'm listening to the rabbi that Omar interviewed last week, the podcast last week, Manis Friedman. I'm hooked on him now because his idea is, one of his ideas is that, we humans are always on the take. We pray to God asking for things. And he put us here because he needed us, and he needs us to be virtuous and to hear him and listen. And, he revealed what he wants from us, and that is to be virtuous and to live like him.
I really enjoyed that podcast too. I'll put that link in the show in the description for this. I had someone, we mentioned it last week, and I had a guy, one of my friends that listened to the podcast, called me and said, "Who are you talking about? I want to listen to that." So I put him onto it. But I went back and listened to it again and took notes on it the second time.
Right.
I've got a sponsee I'm meeting with tomorrow, and we're going to discuss it. I wanted him to listen to it so we could talk about it, because he had some very good ideas I really liked.
Yeah.
Well, I love that whole idea of, here we're all on the take. And what about the give? What about giving? and we all know this, being in recovery, what about the rest of the world? We can only show them, live by example, so to speak, which, penetrates our children, our families, our communities, etc., etc. And this is me, who did not believe in God 5 minutes ago.
There was something I saw on Facebook, some kind of meme that says, the revolution isn't this with like the picks and axes and pitchforks, but actually community helping community, and pictures of everybody kind of helping everybody in a kind of commune type way. Like,
yes,
this is the way we're going to be the change we want to see, not by, the angry mob mentality.
Yeah, angry mob doesn't work, as we know. It's war. Anger
begets more anger.
Yeah,
it's just more polarizing. It's us and them.
Yeah, that divisiveness, if my conversation is dividing, it's not the right conversation.
Right.
That's just bottom line. I was back to the Rabbi Feldman.
No, Freeman.
Thank you. Freeman. I was thinking about, one of his big phrases that caught me was that God was needy and that he created us because he had a need.
Yes.
So if we're the created one, then we're not the one with the need. We were created for a reason. We need to find the reason we were created, and we're taken care of. So we're not the needy one in this relationship. Now that flew against a lot of, religious thinking.
Yeah, the takers.
So I was thinking about that because that flew against a lot of what, of course I was raised with, that it was the flip of that. It was the opposite, was how I was raised. And I got to thinking about it. And if we look at God as being love, then I would think the reason God needed us was he needed someone to love. Because if you are love, where's that going? That's going out. That's going to be giving, not getting. So that was how I processed it. And I said, meditated on it. I said, I said, can that be? And I'm trying to be open-minded. And I said, yes, that makes perfect sense. So my meditative thought since then has been, will I let God love me today?
Doesn't it
get in the way?
It's a whole new way of looking at it.
It's revolutionary.
It is. And it's not even, I don't think it's a revolutionary thought, but it's
a revolutionary take on how we've always interpreted.
It is. Yeah, for sure.
So,
for sure.
He's the needy one.
So if I'm letting him love me today, what am I going to be doing? I'm going to be loving people. I'm going to be giving instead of getting.
Yep.
Exactly what we're talking about here. And that virtue that we're looking for to cultivate will be cultivated in us. And we'll start influencing from, and this is why I really like the idea in recovery of attraction rather than promotion. The idea that we share our experience, strength, and hope. And if we don't sell recovery. We don't convince people they need to, stop whatever it is they're doing. We share what we're doing. If that resonates with them, so be it. They can take whatever action they want to take with it. If they don't, that's totally up to them. That's not up to us to convince or sell or anything. And that way we don't, take the responsibility. We don't take the credit if they get sober, nor do we take the blame if they don't. It's not that we didn't do a good enough job. We just share what happened with us, and if that's something that resonates with them, they want to do, they do. We just love them, in other words. So I like that idea of attraction, And I think that with this cultivating virtue, it's the same way that we start seeing our family influence. We start seeing, our community, our country, and so forth. And the way we do that, it's interesting. The third translation said, at the last part, we observe every aspect of that for what it does, that we look at it. And the way that we know, let me cut the bottom of that one off. The way that we know is by observing and seeing. But we talked about looking. I mean, I've been blind to this was blind to this for so many years that there was no way for me to look and see virtue, because there was no spiritual awakening at all. So it was impossible for me to see this. So how could I even start walking in this,
What's really interesting is, I think of like my family, and I was not in recovery. I had so many resentments and anger, and used a lot of that to fuel my drinking. Whereas now that I'm practicing the Tao and Buddhism, it's something about observing the family for what it does. I'm actually realizing a lot of the things that they do that are firmly, not purposely, by any of their means, but I'm observing all the things that they do that are in align with it, versus looking at all the things that they don't do.
Right.
Very interesting.
Mitchell says that if we let the Tao be present in our life, we will become genuine. Become genuine.
All I want to be is authentic and genuine.
Isn't it, Marla? That's what we all want, is to be genuine,
Yes.
And he says the mark of a genuine person is straightforwardness. He has nothing to hide, nothing to defend. He's genuine. Nothing to hide, nothing to defend is how Mitchell, in the second translation there, says that means. And that really is what we want. And if we live that way, then it's starting to be seen in everything else.
Mm-hmm.
And it's so much less exhausting.
For sure.
It's like so much less exhausting to not be angry with people, not be resentful of people, just firmly, stay in the present, stay in the, in the Tao, than to create all these stories and feed the stories. It's so much less exhausting.
Just on a personal note, my husband is very, very needy. In my eyes, of course. And since I listened to Rabbi Friedman, I'm thinking, well, it's really nice to be needed. It feels really good to be needed. And it's kind of slowly changing my opinion or judgment of Larry's neediness to feeling good about being needed. So it's kind of changing the dynamics. Bless you.
It wouldn't. You ever have to sneeze and then it just won't happen? That's what was happening for me. Sorry.
Yeah.
Surrender to the sneeze, buddy.
Sneeze now. I was trying, Paul. I really was trying to surrender. I was trying really hard.
When you try and it doesn't work, you just have to do. You can't force it.
Yeah.
Anyways.
Letting the Tao, for me, that really goes back to what I just read about seeking a way to give, that I have to look for a way in that interaction that I'm wanting to control and do.
Mm-hmm. That's what I was just saying. Instead of, looking for a way to give him rather than be angry that he's taking so much. It's less exhausting.
And I started looking at different situations in my life that I've been a taker rather than a giver, and bringing those to light, looking at them. Like this says, how do I know? I look, evaluating that. In recovery terms, I could even say, do a 4th step on that. Why do I have this anxiety about this particular person? Let me look at that and talk to someone about it and look at it and see what the issues are, and then start surrendering those issues. So if we have a situation or a relationship in our life, we have to look at it. For me, it helps if I do that with another person, because my ideas in my head totally change when I get them out on paper, and especially when I talk to someone else about them too. My sponsor taught me that, because I don't want to go talk to him about something. He said, no, write it out, then come talk to me. I said, why do I need to write it out? We can just talk. He said, no. He said, I want you to write it out. I said, okay. So I'd write it out, write out the situation, like, who it is, what they're doing, like you're doing a 4th step. And every time I wrote it out like that, I saw parts of it that I didn't see when it was just up here rolling around in my head. Mm. And it really helped to identify things that the problem was always something different than what I thought it was in the beginning, because I never could really see. I wasn't able to look. I needed someone else to help me look. So that's getting easier, but I still do the same process. If I have something I can't figure out, I'm going to write it down. Then I go talk to my sponsor about it and say, hey, what do you see in this? What am I missing here? And I do that with my sponsees and friends in recovery. But that idea of looking instead of hiding. So let's look. Let's figure out a way to give. Seek a way to give. That's good. Was there anything in Wayne Dyer you wanted to talk about, Marla?
It's a tiny chapter.
It is. I wasn't impressed. I don't think he spent much time with Lao Tzu on this chapter myself.
No. It's okay. We can skip it. The last paragraph is realize how much your life matters.
Yeah. Why don't you read it?
All right. Wayne Dyer. Realize how much your life matters. It is said that when a butterfly flaps its wings, that energy flows thousands of miles away. Therefore, everything you think and do extends outward and multiplies. Live your life knowing that the difference you choose to make is toward wholeness, not destructiveness. Even if no one sees or acknowledges it, an act of unkindness contains energy that impacts our entire universe. And a silent blessing or thought of love towards others contains a vibration that will be felt throughout the cosmos. William Blake's vision expresses this idea. To see a world in a grain of sand and a heaven in a wild flower, hold infinity in the palm of your hand and eternity in an hour. Be conscious of how very much you matter to all of creation. And the do the Tao now. Dedicate a day to extending kind thoughts and acts towards your family, your community, your country, and the world. In your family, encourage someone who's struggling with low self-esteem. In your community, pick up litter and recycle it without judgment. In your country, spend a few moments in silent prayer, sending loving energy to those who are in positions of power, then do the same for the world, including any so-called enemies.
So-called enemies.
Yeah, hopefully you don't have any enemies.
So-called enemies. The important thing there for me is what we do matters. Who around me I can love matters. I can make a difference. And it starts with those people around me. Sure does. What?
I was just thinking about what's going on around me right now. I live on a street called Woodward, and Woodward, I'm in car country, car city, and Woodward used to be the thruway from, north to South Detroit. And so this is where all the cars would run. So for the last 25 years, we've had something called the Woodward Dream Cruise, where people who are car aficionados drive up and down Woodward. And then there's people who sit in their lawn chairs on the side of Woodward, watching all the cars go by. this goes on for a week, and it backs up traffic, and there's tons of, there's some beautiful cars, and there's people from all over the world here. But it's a big mess. And, I'm driving home last night from my yoga class, Zen, and it took me a half an hour to go 2 miles because I have to be on this street to get home. And all I could think of was how mad I am, and I wanted to lay on my horn, and I wanted to shout out to the people, like, get a life, go to the gym, instead of sitting around.
Get out of my way.
Get out of my way. Yeah, it's very much like that. And, so today we're having this Tao meeting, and I'm thinking, how can I be kind to all these people sitting on the side of the road?
This is all they have.
What?
This is all they have. Give it to them.
Okay.
Open your heart to them, Marla.
I'm trying.
Fix them some lemonade and just stop and give them drinks on the while you.
I'll throw some water bottles.
Yeah. Just small bottles, though, so it won't leave a big bruise.
Well, those are the times they say, like when you're waiting in line at the grocery store, when you're waiting in traffic, those are the times it's great when everything's easy and everything's balanced and you're after yoga and Zen. It's really the time to put all these principles into practice when you're not Zen, when you're waiting, when you're in traffic. Those are the opportunities to really test.
I know, real life situations.
Real life, yeah.
Real life situations. So I'm aware. I was very aware of how I wanted to lay on my horn, and I didn't. And I didn't shout out.
Imagine the repercussions of what you get back when you give out that anger.
Yeah, I know. So I didn't. So, and I got home safely. Yeah, which is, a whole other issue. Anyway,
that's why I love my wife's adaptive cruise on her car, because it slows down. In creeping traffic, you don't have to do a thing except just sit there, and it just creeps along with the cars. You don't have to touch a thing. It's wonderful.
That is really nice.
It really helped my patience with traffic.
Just, put on something good on the radio and just...
I was going to say, put on like a podcast or put the time to good use.
So normally we leave town for this weekend because it's such a mess. But I invited friends over who love cars, and we're going to join them.
You're going to sit out in the chairs and watch the cars, Marla?
No,
we're going to be part of the problem.
We're going to walk. We're going to walk up and down and see all the fancy cars.
Enjoy yourself. Yeah, that's good. Yeah.
You can't beat them. Join them.
Exactly.
That's it, Lala. And we can't.
I can't because I live in the middle of it. I have no choice.
What's impossible anyway?
Yeah.
My thing is, like, what am I in such a hurry to get home for? Like, there's nothing I have to do.
I was hungry because I don't eat before yoga. So I was hungry,
lonely, tired.
Right. I was hungry and angry.
It's funny though, but that really is true. It's these little things that make all the difference in the world. Is learning how to let things just be and have this virtue grow in our lives, even in the smallest of things.
Yeah.
It's easier to do in the big stuff.
Yes,
you can see it, this big, but I don't see those little things till I'm in the middle of them. I'm like, oh shit, I've done screwed this up, and I didn't even realize it was happening. I couldn't even see it till it had already happened, Well,
also, if you're going to be in that situation, like if you're going to be in traffic and waiting, because it's that car week, just to prepare yourself, to put yourself in the right mindset. We were talking about in one of my Buddhist meetings about, not having anger towards people or not being annoyed with people. It's like, hey, if you're not in a position if you've gone through enough that day that you're up to here, quit seeing those people off for another day. Wait until you have that baseline energy to deal with it, or prepare yourself adequately.
Yeah. So I was not prepared last night because generally the cruise is not supposed to start until Saturday. So these people are not supposed to be on the road yet.
Oh.
So,
being tested.
Yeah. So anyways, I'm joining them. It's like, this is the way it is for a couple more days. All right. Just so I can handle it.
My wife had surgery a couple of weeks ago, and she wanted to go back to work and wanted me to take her to work one morning, and I never have to ride in traffic anymore. And there's a town near where we live that everyone drives so aggressively in this town. It's unbelievable. It's different from other places. And it's not Atlanta. And people drive, like, there's a 4-lane going into town, and everyone drives in the left lane instead of the right lane. I mean, it's just crazy. I mean, it really, and everyone knows here, if you see a tag from that county, that they, that they're not going to drive the way people are supposed to drive, as we think, And I was taking her to work, and somebody cut in front of me, and I just got my old aggressiveness back, right? And she was like, slow down, dude. She was like, and I dropped her off for work, and I was like, oh, I screwed up. And I said, well, I'll do better tomorrow. I'm going to try again tomorrow, because I know I'll have to take her tomorrow again.
You can have now compassion for what she has to go through.
I said, okay, I'm prepared. I'm going to be okay tomorrow. I'm going to try again and do better. So that next day she says, I feel better. I'm going to drive. I said, no, I want to take you because I want. She said, I'm driving. I'm like, okay.
Isn't awareness just the key to everything? Just being aware.
It really
is.
Even after the fact, like, yeah, you felt that way in the moment, buddy, but as long as, like, after the fact, you have time to reflect and say, I'll do better next time. That's progress for sure, because this thing is a process. It doesn't say we would be genuine. It says we would become genuine. Thank God it's become, not, because that's what happens, That's exactly what happens. It's this process of waking up and letting go. Good stuff, ladies.
I'm glad to be a part of it,
Me too.
Yeah.
Me too.
Part of the process.
Is everyone good? Any closing thoughts?
Don't drive angry.
Really good today.
I know. Don't drive angry. Okay.
Do what, Lala?
From Groundhog Day. Don't drive angry.
Oh, yeah. Y'all have a good week.
All right.
Thanks. Bye.
Thank you for listening to the Tao of Our Understanding Recovery Podcast. For more information about the RRC, the Recovery Revolution Community, go to omarpinto.com and click on the link that says Recovery Revolution Community. Once you join the RRC, you'll be able to participate in this meeting and many more live, plus access to a video library of past meetings and many more benefits for being a part of this growing community. Thanks again for listening. And if you enjoyed this episode, please share this podcast with your friends in recovery.